Welcome to Overwatch. This time we're going to be looking at the Winston gameplay preview released by Blizzard. So this was released quite a while ago, and I'm releasing this one along with the Winston gameplay preview just so they come out as a nice little pairing. And this is an interesting little game. We actually see Winston fulfill his role to an excellent degree, so this is a really good preview to watch if you're interested in playing Winston, because he does an excellent job. And also if you have a friend, try and nudge him into playing Zenyatta, because this combination goes off the chain in this game. It's really nice to see. As usual, I'll make a simple caveat. If you haven't seen the gameplay preview without my commentary, you can go and watch it on the link below. If you haven't watched it yet, then what the hell have you been doing? If you know what my channel is, and you probably have seen all of these anyway. But still, go and check it out if you haven't seen it, and then come back and we can talk about the game. I'll make the usual teams caveat that you can change who you play as in the middle of a game, but because of simplicity's sake and because the developers make their names into the characters that they're playing as, just for ease of readability for new players, they choose not to in these games. So as usual, I like to give you a focus point just to think about while watching the game, and the focus point for this one is going to be target selection. Winston does an excellent job in this game of picking the right target to follow around and picking the right people to focus on and harass. As Winston especially, and as certain heroes, you want to be thinking about, okay, is this character a threat? Is this character someone I want to be thinking about? Symmetra? Probably not, for example, as Winston. You want to be removing her teleporter, sure, if you can get to it, and we'll see that a few times, but Symmetra on her own isn't a threat to you and isn't a threat to the team. What this Winston focuses on is the backline. He focuses on Bastion, who does an excellent job of completely disrupting and nullifying, and when he can get to her, Widowmaker. Widowmaker can't snipe anyone when there's a big angry gorilla shoving a Tesla cannon into that glorious booty of hers. On top of that, he also does a good job of constantly bouncing back to the point and keeping the payload moving. He knows that his shield is probably one of the best things to put on the payload, and so when he's done a good round of disruption, he'll generally retreat, throw a shield onto the payload, stand on it and push forward, using whatever ground he's opened up for the team. So the map will be Watchpoint Gibraltar, and I have talked about Watchpoint Gibraltar a little bit in the McCree preview, but not to the depth I talked about some of the other maps. And very usefully and very helpfully, a Reddit user called Orhin has been releasing these map layouts that are amazing to look at, and from what I can tell, they're pretty spot on. So to take a look at these, and we're going to talk through the map. If you check in the description, there should be a link to the relevant Reddit thread to look at these maps and to look at this guy's amazing work if you want to see the layout of the map. So the first part of Watchpoint Gibraltar is this canyon area. We see a lot of buildings on both sides and there's some high ground towards the back, but the idea is you want to be pushing the cart through this canyon area and trying to take control of that high ground. In particular, the threats in this area are going to be Torbjorn, Bastion and Widowmaker, because they can stand at that back area, and if people are suppressing them at the front, you won't be able to get to them and deal with them. Luckily, we have a Winston, we have a Zenyatta. It's very easy to get to that back line and put some threat and pressure on them, because Orb of Discord has, as far as I can tell, no range limit, so you just whap an Orb of Discord onto the target in the back line, Winston jumps ahead, removes that threat, and the team can push forward nice and cleanly. Of particular interest is this car wash area that's so called by the devs because Symmetra can put her turrets up in an inconvenient location. It looks like you're going through a car wash, so I've stuck with that name. We could just call it the tunnel as well, but that sounds so boring. And we're going to see some good play around that area, in particular because this essentially acts as a funnel for the attacking team. They have to all get crammed into this tight little location. It's very easy to land some effective splash damage and suppression around that corner and take control of that area. Then finally, for the first point, you have this large area that has an overlook that's kind of difficult to push into, but it's not that long, so if you do take control of it for any real amount of time, you will be able to just push through. There is also some cover towards the back and towards the right hand side. There's also a nice little flank area you can come into from the left. For the second point, we go into this hangar. This is a much more confined, much tighter area. People like Reinhardt are going to do well here. Winston's going to do well here. There's a lot of small cover, little nooks and crannies, and a lot of vertical space to mess around with as well. There's also one or two cool places for Widowmaker to hide out in. I do mention this in the preview, but just to have a look out for that moment, because I do love it so much. I hope the maps are full of little places for Widowmaker to hide like that. But yeah, we see this, the shuttle area in particular is going to be good for Winston, because if people start cramming into there, then he can jump in, do a lot of disruption, do a lot of good damage there. People like McCree are also going to do incredibly well in this area, simply because the flashbang is so effective in these tight confines, in those close quarters. And then for the final point we have this very open area, and this is where the team will start to struggle, simply because Mercy and Farah become a lot more dangerous in this area. There's a lot of rooftops that only they can really reach effectively, although Winston can get there with some clever jumping. Also there's very open sight lines, so Bastion and Widowmaker once again become very effective in this area and can lay down a lot of good suppression fire. Ultimately, this final point is where the attacking team will struggle the most, simply because of the team layout they have. They have Reaper, Winston for example. They can't really do too well in this open environment, but we do see Winston do a lot of good work around that final point, and he does actually buy enough time for the team to push forward effectively. And finally, let's meet the teams. So on the attacking team, we have Winston, of course. We have Reaper, Hanzo and Farah providing damage and offensive capability, and we have Zenyatta and Symmetra in support. And on the defending team we have Reinhardt as a tank, we have Mercy and Farah making a welcome return, we have Bastion and Widowmaker on the backline, and Symmetra providing support. It's interesting to note in this game that we don't actually see that much of the attacking team, simply because Winston is often so far forward and doing good work on his own, with Zenyatta, providing support from miles away, that we don't really get to see much of what Farah, Hanzo and Reaper are doing, but we can assume that they're doing a lot of good work cleaning up, and we can assume that they are providing support around the payload, keeping it moving forward as Winston goes and does his job. We will talk more about the teams after the game. Okay, let's jump into the match. And welcome to Watchpoint Gibraltar, and Reaper, stop playing with the blackboard. That's got important science on it. It's probably written something rude on it. That's Reaper all over. Yes, Reaper, time to kill. Bloody hell. Children. All of them children. I will point out that all of the spawns have really like a shitload of physics objects in, and they're all very fun to play with. I heartily recommend doing so while waiting. So what we're going to see, as I get to proper analysis, is the attacking team are going to immediately leave all by one exit. Winston allows them to do that by dropping his shield down. It makes it nice and safe for everyone just to run out of one single exit where Farah can't immediately, shatter all of them. And Widowmaker is going to do a good job of holding down that cliff face, but unfortunately Widowmaker and Bastion not too good against Winston, especially when paired with Zenyatta. What we're going to see here is textbook good team play. As Winston just leaps forward, Bastion there, stuck on his own, can't defend against Winston because Winston can so easily get behind him and just peel down, take him down, nice and clean there. That leaves the rest of the team to clear up as the backline is simply removed. Widowmaker's been taken out and Bastion's been taken out. That just leaves Mercy and Farah to deal with. And while that is a strong combination, it's not strong enough to stop the rest of the team. So we're going to see the team push through this car wash area, and they do manage to get through it as Reinhardt surfs off into the sunset. They do just manage to roll through it. Unfortunately, Farah has been laying in wait and does lay down an amazing barrage to stop any push, but Winston does leap forward. He has the orb of regen on him, so he will just heal up, and again, shields forward. He's keeping the rest of the team occupied. There's 3 people focused on stopping him, and here we see the first berserk of the game. Forces Bastion into tank mode. It's the only real defense he has against this kind of thing, but Winston doing a good job focusing on Mercy, focusing on the orb of discorded target to bring him down. And again, immediately back onto the point once the threats are taken care of, just keeping it moving, keeping it pushed forward. Here we see him trying to lay down some damage on Farah. He can't really do a good job of that. Farah is so dangerous in the air, she can just stay up there. And a whiffed Earth Shatter from Reinhardt. That's going to happen a number of times this game. Reinhardt does not have a good time of it, unfortunately. Doesn't manage to do much. Payload reached the objective. Mercy does fire for ultimate, but it's a bit too late. Does resurrect a good number of people. And here we see the first death of the game. Both Bastion and Widowmaker have set up on that high ground and are laying down the damage, so this does buy the defending team some time to stabilize, but we can see it on the thing that is still getting contested, it's still getting pushed forward, as Winston does run back into the fray. So, because the spawn has moved up now, it is actually very hard to hold this little courtyard area, so the defending team has to fall back. And they will push back towards that shuttle area, and here we see the power of Concussive Blast. I believe that has been changed, although I'm not entirely sure if that is completely gone, that Concussive Blast does bonus damage to shields. But here we see a dream situation for Winston. Everyone's packed into a tight area. He's hitting about 4 people now with his Tesla cannon, and fires off his ultimate, does spot the teleporter, and we'll focus on bringing it down. Everyone is slamming damage into him, and this is actually a good idea by Reinhardt to pin him. It will stop him doing damage for a few moments. And here we see a duel between Symmetra and Winston. Winston wins that every single time, but pay attention to where Widowmaker is. Did you see it? Did you spot her? Have a freeze frame to show where she is. I love that position so much. She is very vulnerable to Farah and to Hanzo there. She can't dodge around, but it's such a cool place to be. I love it. I hope there's tons of places like that. Here we see Orb of Discord on Bastion, and immediately taken down by Winston. His Tesla Cannon does enough damage with the Orb of Discord to just shatter his defenses and take him out. Again, a whiffed ult by Reinhardt. The Zenyatta will not be affected by that, I believe, while he's in his Transcendence form. So, an easy push for the attacking team, although they have been sorted out now. Bastion has fired off his ultimate, does do a huge amount of damage in that tank form. I believe the rockets hit for something insane, like 150 damage. It hits for a lot. I'd have to check that up. Have a slide in on screen giving you the actual number as it stands right now. So again, we see a Berserk. He is disrupting, keeping the team focused, keeping the pin on this little area. There's a good 4 people focusing on the rampaging. Winston does get picked off by Farah eventually, but it does give the attacking team enough time to push forward, occupy this ramp area, and set up for the next big push when Winston gets back. Because there's a teleporter there, he can immediately get back into the fight. Farah laying down suppressing fire from above, and unfortunately does hit a land area that she really shouldn't have landed on because there's a giant gorilla there with a Tesla cannon. The team in the meantime has pushed up and taken control of this area, and it's just clean up duty now for Winston, and immediately back onto the point. Widowmaker on her own, she's not going to be much of a threat, and there's no point to chase that. The rest of the team has got that. Reaper can take care of it, no doubt. Some damage in from the side as Bastion does lay down suppressing fire from above. That little machine gun of his actually does pack a punch, and again, tank form, jukes the first shot, jukes the second shot, and does get hit by the third, but it doesn't even scratch him. Bastion falls down, gets stuck in a corner, and is held in position by that Symmetra turret. Here we see something quite clever. This is where Farah and Mercy really come alive. Those two have so much space in the air here that, you know, we can disrupt her when she's on the ground, but Farah immediately takes the air, Mercy follows, and now we can't really do anything, especially in this rampaging form. We can maybe occasionally knock Mercy about, but she has a shield on her from Symmetra, and that's not going to be enough to really disable her. Those two are a massive threat in this area. We also have Bastion and Widowmaker further up, providing fire support. And that's going to keep the team quite pinned down as Winston takes up this flank. He's going to look around and see if he can find any way to get to the backline without jumping in immediately. That saves his jump so he can immediately leave. But if you find something quite juicy here, it is the teleporter from Symmetra. It's not too big a deal, but this is actually kind of a good choice. He's in a tight confines. He's pinned down by Reinhardt, so he's not going to be able to avoid Reinhardt. Reinhardt does a lot more damage than him, so he's just going to focus on splashing down the teleporter, gets rid of that, takes an objective, occupies 2 people at once, but unfortunately we can see that the payload hasn't moved. I put that down largely to Bastion and Widowmaker. They can do a lot of good suppression from that backline, especially with Mercy and Farah on the front line, occupying so much attention, where the attacking team have to try and take care of them because they do so much damage, but they can't really push forward. Reinhardt taking down cleanly, Orb of Discord plus Winston is going to take down anything in good time. Again, the Zenyatta-Winston pairing is very strong and does a very good job of taking out key targets. Makes Winston into a dangerous little assassin, if you will. Farah and Mercy again in the air, and here we see Farah get picked off on the attacking team. That's simply because Widowmaker is an excellent counter to Farah. She drifts around so slowly in the air that she can't really dodge those pinpoint shots. And here again, into the back line, Bastion can't set up, Bastion can't do anything, Widowmaker's trying to slam, you know, assault rifle rounds into him. No one manages to kill him. He occupies 4 people's attentions, puts down the shield. When he starts to hit loads, he jumps out nice and safely, all with regeneration, keeping him nice and topped up. Allows the attacking team to get round this corner and into this position. Zenyatta ultimate keeps the team pushing, keeps the payload rolling, and that's all they need to do is keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. The defending team is a team that is very dangerous if they manage to get set up, if they get Mercy and Farah suppressing, and then Bastion and Widowmaker on the back line. Here we see Bastion set up, Winston just jumps behind him, all Discord on the target, and look, he's next to a cliff! Imagine if there's Lucio on this map. Or imagine, you know, Farah, come on with your concussive blast, girl. Instead, she fires off her barrage, kills 2 people, which is pretty damn good, if I say so myself. And a beautiful dragon strike by Hanzo that actually cuts through the attacking spawn. The defending spawn, sorry, and that's really nice. Bastion runs out, tries to save the point, but the moment he sets up, Winston jumps over his head, does some damage, puts him down, and secures the payload. Very clean offensive. Excellent job by Winston doing his role of disruption. And that's what you need to do as Winston. You are huge, you are annoying, act like it. And the play of the game, we see that Winston's doing his job, disruptive, puts down the shield, soaking up damage. Reinhardt tries and misses the pin. Farah does a good job of cleaning up 2 people, but it's not enough to stop the final push. A very well deserved top billing by Winston and Zenyatta there. So a short little match, but an excellent one by the attacking team. They only got stalled out a few times, but pretty much had a constant push towards the finish. Now, because we see so little of the attacking team, and because I've covered that Winston and Zenyatta are pretty good together already, I don't feel it's actually that worth talking about the attacking team in any great detail, simply because we don't get to see what Hanzo, Pharah and Reaper are doing most of the time, and Symmetra is being Symmetra, providing buffs to everyone, and providing the occasional teleporter, which is all very useful. Instead, let's focus on the defending team, because they actually have a very strong team here, and I actually quite like the team layout. So the way that their team will work is that the idea is that Reinhardt will provide tanking around the point, keeping them off the point, with Symmetra providing turrets to keep people slowed down around the payload, and to keep them off it, and to, try and stop people doing that, while Widowmaker and Bastion set up, a nice safe distance away, and throw damage down at the payload and pick people off as they try and push it. Pharah and Mercy, meanwhile, can stay around the mid-range, can jump around, do damage, and be Pharah and Mercy, do a huge amount of damage output, kill people off nice and quickly, and maybe even set people up for Widowmaker and Bastion to just finish off and clean up. It's a very tight little team that unfortunately does not too well against this Winston, who has an absolute monster of a game. And Reinhardt unfortunately does not. He misses about 3 ultimates, and I think the only one he lands is literally after the game is finished, and then he hits one on Winston. So Reinhardt has an unfortunate time there. I don't know whether he just missed them around corners and such, or whether the shield actually stops the ultimate. That was kind of an interesting interaction to see. I'd be very curious to see if shields do actually prevent Earthshatter going through, because that's quite a big deal. So in an actual game, how could the defending team adapt to this Winston threat? Well, on the first point, I actually think Torbjorn would have done better than Bastion. Torbjorn's turret has the added bonus that it can rotate around 360 degrees, unlike Bastion, who can't do that, and as such, he would actually be a much greater threat to this Winston. Winston can't just jump into a Torbjorn turret and hope to survive it. He has to throw a shield down around it, and he will never be able to kill it before the turret, especially once it hits level 2, level 3, you will never be able to take it out by the time that Torbjorn takes him down. And that makes Torbjorn a real big threat to Winston. It would have kept him off the backline a little bit longer, but Bastion, should have done a good job of doing that. Unfortunately, Winston is able to get onto him again and again and again, and unfortunately his team is not in a position to protect him. What would have been nice is if Pharah and Mercy, especially on that first point, spent more time, hanging back, keeping the Bastion safe, and enabling Bastion to do his job and pick off Hanzo, Pharah and Reaper, who he should do an excellent job of taking out as long as Hanzo doesn't get behind him. The only real threat to him then is Symmetra, and Symmetra does a good job of taking down Bastion with her shield penetration. I do also want to point out an interesting interaction between Winston's ultimate and Reinhardt. I think one good way of dealing with Winston's ultimate, you can't really kill him, especially if he's jumped behind Bastion, as we've seen him do a number of times. He jumps behind Bastion, then fires off his ultimate, and then you can't stop him. And when he has his ultimate on anyway, he has a reduced cooldown on jump pack, so he's going to get behind Bastion. He's not going to stand in front of Bastion. One good way of stopping that is Reinhardt's charge. We do see him managing to charge the primal raged out Winston once in this game, and it does pin him as it does so. That will be a really good way of driving Winston into the firing line and stopping him for a few moments, eating up a few precious seconds of that ultimate, calming Winston down as Reinhardt slams him into a wall, and then Bastion pumps damage into him. Also using Pharah's concussive blast, just keeping him disrupted, knocking him about, keeping him off people. They do an excellent job towards the end of the game. Pharah and Mercy, Pharah launches up into the air, Mercy follows, and Winston can't do anything. And that's a really good way of dodging the Winston. Then you just have to deal with, Reaper and Hanzo and Pharah. On the opposing team, Reaper's the real threat there, as hitting targets in the air, I don't think it's going to be that easy for Hanzo. And again for Pharah as well, it's not going to be the easiest time in the world. And just to quickly wrap up, let's address the focus point. We see throughout the game that Winston is going to be funneling on the important targets, the ones that he has to deal with, the ones that only he can really deal with, which is Widowmaker and Bastion. Bastion in particular. Widowmaker is just like a secondary bonus target. It will be very annoying to try and snipe with Winston, zapping you away, so... But Widowmaker starts to adapt, starts to try and find places where Winston can't get to easily. She also does a good job of trying to split away from Bastion, so if you have Widowmaker in one location, Bastion in another, then Winston can't harass them both at the same time. Unfortunately, if Winston does get onto her, she really can't ignore that. She has to zipline away or put assault rifle damage into him, and that completely stops and locks down her sniping. Again, I see it more as Reinhardt's job to try and protect that back line. Again, Charge would do a good job of keeping him away and keeping him disrupted. Symmetra has to try and lay down turrets, but her turrets aren't going to do enough. Again, towards that final point, Torbjorn would have probably been better, simply because the teleporter isn't that useful on the final point, but again, can't change characters, so yeah. I'll also mention that Tracer could have probably done a good job instead of Symmetra on that final point. Is as long as Tracer can build up her ultimate, even with the recent change in the Gamescom build where Tracer's ultimate will only do 450 damage, that's still, you know, almost all of Winston's health, and doing the rest of the 50 damage is trivial for this team. So swapping to Tracer and focusing on pulse bombing Winston every single time he jumps in wouldn't be a bad idea. Just throwing that out there as food for thought. A defensive Tracer isn't actually a bad thing. As long as she's building up her ultimate nice and quickly, you spend all your time harassing around the flanks, and then you throw a bomb on the tank, and then the tank is done. Simple. Otherwise, this is just a really well done payload map. We have Winston just providing disruption, buying time for the team to constantly keep the payload moving. This is what you want to do. If Winston is doing his job correctly, then the enemy team will be diverting more resources than the attacking team is using by just sending one character in with an orb of harmony on him. The defending team has to spend, you know, 3 or 4 people trying to handle that, and so the rest of the team can easily push in, can easily keep the payload moving, and can get that clean, nice, easy victory. So, thanks for watching to the end. I have been one channel amongst many, and I hope you learned a little about the Winston gameplay preview. I just want to mention quickly that the good folks over at TGN are having a full 10th giveaway event thing, where if you're already subbed to my channel, you already have a chance of winning some goodies. If you check the description, there will be a link to their site. It's completely free, you don't really have to give anything, you just have to sub to a few community creators, and most of those guys I know who they are and they're good blokes, so I do recommend checking it out. And you have a chance to win some Overwatch swag and some Battle.net gift cards as well. It's kind of cool, so go check that out. Otherwise, if you have any comments about the video or about my content, then feel free to make them. I do read them all. And thank you for watching. Doodles.